You forget one thing, Darren. I play the long game.
They say marriage is like a deck of cards. In the beginning, all you need is 2 hearts and a diamond. By the end, you're looking for a club and a spade. Well, I found my club, and I was about to use it on my wife's brother-in-law, who thought my house was his personal ATM and my wife was his biggest supporter. My name is Pete O'Malley, and I'm a maintenance supervisor at Cleveland Steelworks. 42 years old, built like a linebacker who discovered pizza, and married to Nicole for 18 years. We've got a daughter, Riley, who's 18 and heading to college next month. Everything sounds normal, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. It started 3 months ago when Nicole's sister married this piece of work named Darren Price, regional director at some pharmaceutical company, drives a BMW, wears suits that cost more than my monthly salary, and has the personality of a parking ticket. The guy looked at me like I was something stuck to his Italian leather shoes from day one. Pete works with his hands, he'd say to people at family gatherings, like I was some kind of caveman. Manual labor. Very honest work. The way he said it made honest sound like a 4-letter word. But here's where it gets interesting. Darren didn't just marry into our family, he decided to take it over. Started with small things, suggesting Nicole deserved better opportunities than being married to a blue-collar guy, offering to pay for Riley's college because Pete probably hasn't saved enough. Each comment was a little needle, carefully placed. Nicole ate it up like chocolate cake. Suddenly, my job wasn't respectable enough. My friends weren't sophisticated enough. My dreams weren't big enough. She'd come home from dinner at Darren and her sister's place with a new attitude and a longer list of my shortcomings. Darren says we should refinance the house, she announced one Tuesday night, not even looking up from her phone. He knows a guy who can get us a better rate. Darren says we should trade in your truck for something more fuel efficient. Darren thinks Riley should apply to private schools instead of community college. Darren says, Darren thinks. Darren knows best. I started calling him Saint Darren in my head, but the joke was wearing thin. The breaking point came last month. I walked into our kitchen to find Nicole and Darren huddled over our financial papers, bank statements, mortgage documents, Riley's college fund statements, my financial papers, spread across my kitchen table like they were planning a hostile takeover. What's going on here? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Darren looked up with that smug smile of his. Just helping Nicole understand her options, Pete. You've made some interesting financial choices over the years. Interesting. There was that tone again. Nicole wouldn't meet my eyes. Darren was just explaining how we could leverage our equity to... To what? I interrupted. Since when do we need Darren's permission to manage our own money? It's not about permission, Darren said, standing up and straightening his tie. It's about optimization. Nicole deserves security, and frankly, Pete, your approach has been rather conservative. Conservative. Like it was a disease. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me? You heard me. Get your hands off my papers, get out of my kitchen, and get out of my house. Darren laughed. Actually laughed. Nicole, you see what I mean about his temper? This is exactly the kind of reaction that... I took a step forward. I'm 6'2" and weigh about 220. Darren was maybe 5'10" in his expensive shoes. The laugh died in his throat. Pete, Nicole snapped. He's family. No, I said, still looking at Darren. He's your sister's husband, and he just wore out his welcome. Darren gathered up his papers. Not mine, I noticed, but some printouts he'd brought. Nicole, we'll continue this conversation later. When you're ready to have an adult discussion about your future. Your future. Not our future. Nicole's future. After he left, Nicole and I had the fight to end all fights. She accused me of being jealous, insecure, and embarrassing. I accused her of letting her brother-in-law disrespect her husband and invade our privacy. We said things that couldn't be taken back. She slept in the guest room that night, and the next night, and the night after that. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened with my friends. Ray Kowalski has been my best friend since high school. We've been through everything together. My dad's funeral, his divorce, Riley's birth, his mom's cancer. We grab beers every Friday at Murphy's Tavern, watch the Browns lose every Sunday, and cover each other's shifts when life gets complicated. Ray's the kind of guy who'd help you move a body without asking questions, or so I thought. You need to apologize to Darren, he said the Friday after the kitchen incident. We were sitting in our usual booth, nursing our usual beers, but nothing felt usual. I nearly choked on my Budweiser. Come again? Look, Pete, I like you. We're friends. But you can't just throw family members out of your house because you don't like their advice. Since when do you care about Darren Price? Ray shifted uncomfortably. Since he offered me a job. And there it was. The real reason. St. Darren had gotten to my best friend with the one thing Ray couldn't resist: money. He's looking for someone to manage maintenance at his company's new facility, Ray continued. Good pay, benefits, regular hours. He mentioned it after he heard about what happened at your place. Said he understood you were under stress, but that didn't excuse your behavior. He offered you a job after I kicked him out of my house. He's trying to help, Pete. Maybe if you swallowed your pride and... My pride? I stood up so fast the table shook. This isn't about pride, Ray. This is about some rich boy thinking he can buy his way into my family and rearrange my life. Or maybe it's about you being too stubborn to see when someone's trying to help. I stared at my best friend, my former best friend, and realized Darren was smarter than I'd given him credit for. He hadn't just bought Ray with a job offer. He'd convinced him that I was the problem. Enjoy your new job, I said, and walked out. The next week, I found out it wasn't just Ray. Mike Torres, who I'd known for 15 years, suddenly started avoiding me at the grocery store. When I finally cornered him in the cereal aisle, he gave me some BS about how Nicole had been reaching out to their wives, explaining how difficult things were at home. She's worried about you, man, Mike said, not meeting my eyes. Says you've been angry, paranoid. Maybe you should talk to someone. Paranoid. Right. I was paranoid for not wanting my brother-in-law going through my bank statements. Then there was Jim Bradley, my neighbor for 8 years. We'd borrowed tools, helped each other with yard work, shared more beers than I could count. Jim's wife got a call from Nicole, explaining how I'd threatened Darren and how she was scared of my increasingly erratic behavior. One by one, they chose sides, and it wasn't my side. The genius of it was how reasonable it all sounded. Successful businessman tries to help struggling family, husband overreacts, wife reaches out for support, friends rally around the victim. I was being painted as the bad guy in my own life story, and the brushstrokes were so subtle I almost believed it myself. Almost. But I knew what I'd seen in my kitchen that day. I knew what Darren's smug smile meant, what Nicole's refusal to meet my eyes told me, what those financial papers spread across my table represented. This wasn't about helping. This was about taking over. The final straw came 2 weeks later at Riley's graduation party. We'd planned a small backyard barbecue, family and close friends. I was manning the grill, trying to pretend everything was normal, when I overheard a conversation that made my blood boil. Pete's always been a little rough around the edges, Nicole was saying to a group that included Ray, Mike, and their wives. But lately he's been different. Angry all the time, suspicious. I'm starting to worry about Riley being around him. Riley being around me, her own father. Maybe he needs professional help, suggested Mike's wife, Linda. Darren thinks it might be a midlife crisis, Nicole continued. You know how men get when they realize their limitations? Their limitations. Like being a maintenance supervisor with some kind of character flaw? I turned off the grill and walked over to the group. The conversation died instantly. Having a good time? I asked, my voice pleasant as Sunday morning. Nervous nods all around. Great. Ray, Mike, thanks for coming. Drive safe. Ray frowned. Pete, the party just started. No, I said, still smiling. It just ended. For you. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Finally, Ray stood up. You're making a mistake, Pete. Yeah, I am. I'm making the mistake of finding out who my real friends are. They left. All of them. Nicole was furious. Riley was embarrassed, and I was alone in my backyard with a grill full of burgers nobody wanted to eat. That night, after Riley went to her friend's house and Nicole locked herself in the guest room, I sat in my kitchen and took inventory. My wife was choosing her brother-in-law over me. My daughter was caught in the middle. My friends had been turned against me. My own neighbors thought I was unstable. Most men would have thrown in the towel. Most men would have apologized, swallowed their pride, and tried to make peace. But I'm not most men, and I was about to prove it. You know what they don't tell you about revenge? The planning is the best part. Better than the execution, better than the payoff. There's something pure about sitting in your empty house, surrounded by the wreckage of your relationships and plotting the perfect comeback. I started with research. Darren Price, regional director at Midwest Pharmaceuticals, married to my sister-in-law Janet for 3 months. Lives in a fancy condo downtown, drives a BMW, belongs to the country club. On paper, he looked like a success story. But paper lies. It took me 2 weeks of careful digging to find the cracks in St. Darren's perfect facade. The internet is a beautiful thing when you know how to use it. Public records, social media, professional networking sites. People leave digital footprints everywhere they go. Darren's first red flag was his employment history. He'd been with 4 different pharmaceutical companies in the past 6 years. That's a lot of job hopping for someone supposedly climbing the corporate ladder. Each move came with a promotion and a pay raise, which looked impressive until you dug deeper. His second red flag was financial. Despite his big salary and fancy lifestyle, Darren was leveraged to the hilt. The BMW was leased. The condo was mortgaged at 95%. His country club membership was part of a company package. The man was living paycheck to paycheck, just like the rest of us, but with better marketing. The third red flag was the most interesting. Darren had a pattern of getting close to families, offering financial advice, and somehow ending up with access to their money. 3 times in the past 5 years, he'd been named as a financial advisor on various accounts belonging to relatives or friends. Twice, those relationships had ended badly, with accusations of missing funds and broken trust. But the accusations never stuck. Darren was too smart for outright theft. He was more like a parasite, feeding off his hosts slowly, carefully, making sure they never noticed until it was too late. And now he had his sights set on my family. The beauty of Nicole's betrayal was how completely she'd bought into Darren's act. She wasn't just defending him, she was actively helping him. Those financial papers he'd been studying weren't just bank statements. They were account access forms, insurance beneficiary changes, and loan applications, all with Nicole's signature. My wife was signing away our financial security to impress her new brother-in-law, and she thought I was the problem. But here's what Nicole didn't know about her husband. I might work with my hands, but I think with my head. And I'd been thinking about this situation for 3 weeks straight. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of confronting Darren directly, which would just make me look like the jealous, unstable husband everyone already thought I was going to let him destroy himself. All I had to do was give him enough rope and wait for him to hang himself with it. Step 1 was documentation. I started keeping records of everything, every conversation, every financial document, every interaction between Darren and Nicole. I installed security cameras in my house, not to spy on my wife, but to protect myself from future accusations of threatening behavior. Step 2 was bait. I started acting the part of the defeated husband. I apologized to Nicole for my overreaction to Darren's help. I told her she was right, that I was insecure about our financial situation, and that maybe we should listen to her brother-in-law's advice. Nicole was so relieved by my change in attitude that she didn't question it. Neither did Darren, who saw my surrender as validation of his superiority. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Pete," he said when Nicole invited him over for dinner the following week. "There's no shame in accepting help from family." "You're right," I agreed, playing my part. "I guess I was just overwhelmed." Darren smiled his condescending smile. "It's understandable. Financial planning can be complex for someone without experience." Someone without experience. Right. Step 3 was the trap. Over the next month, I fed Darren carefully selected pieces of financial information, just enough to make him think he was getting the full picture, but not enough to let him see what I was really planning. I told him about our savings account, but not about the separate account I'd opened in my name only. I mentioned our life insurance policies, but not about the policy changes I'd made the week before. I discussed our mortgage refinancing options, but not about the fraud protection services I'd quietly activated on all our accounts. Darren took the bait like a hungry fish. He started making suggestions, offering to handle paperwork, volunteering to meet with financial advisors on our behalf. Each offer was presented as a favor, a way to help poor, overwhelmed Pete navigate the complex world of adult finances. Nicole ate it up. She was so proud of her sophisticated brother-in-law, so grateful for his guidance, so embarrassed by her husband's previous behavior. She encouraged every suggestion, signed every paper, agreed to every meeting, and with each signature, each agreement, each grateful smile, she was building the case that would eventually destroy them both. The confrontation with my former friends was inevitable. I knew they'd eventually show up to stage some kind of intervention, convinced by Nicole and Darren that I was spiraling out of control. I was counting on it. They came on a Saturday afternoon, Ray, Mike, and Jim, looking like a delegation of concerned citizens. Nicole had invited them, of course, as part of her campaign to save me from myself. "We need to talk," Ray said when I answered the door. "Sure," I replied. "Come on in." We sat in my living room, my house, my furniture, my rules, while they took turns explaining how worried they were about me. "Pete, we've been friends for 20 years, Ray began, his voice carrying that careful tone people use when they think they're talking to someone unstable. "We care about you, man. We're worried." I leaned back in my recliner, completely relaxed. "Worried about what?" Mike jumped in. "About how you've been acting. Nicole says you've been paranoid, suspicious. She thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown." "A breakdown," I repeated. "Interesting diagnosis. Any of you get medical degrees since I saw you last?" Jim shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Pete, we know you're under stress. Money problems, work pressure, Riley going to college." "What money problems?" I interrupted. The three of them exchanged glances. Ray cleared his throat. "Nicole mentioned that you guys were struggling financially. That's why Darren was trying to help." "Did she mention that our mortgage is paid down to 60%? That we have $43,000 in savings? That Riley's college fund is fully funded?" Silence. "Did she mention that we own both our cars outright, have no credit card debt, and that my struggling job comes with a pension and full benefits?" More silence. "Or did she just tell you that poor Pete was in over his head and needed his successful brother-in-law to save him?" Mike frowned. "She said you guys were having trouble making ends meet." "She lied." The word hung in the air like smoke. Ray leaned forward. "Why would Nicole lie about that?" "Good question. Why don't you ask her? Better yet, why don't you ask Darren what he was really doing with those financial papers I found him going through?" "He was trying to help," Jim insisted. "Help himself," I corrected. "See, here's what you guys don't know about St. Darren. He's broke, leveraged up to his eyeballs, living paycheck to paycheck, and looking for someone else's money to solve his problems." I pulled out a folder I'd prepared for this moment. "Want to see his credit report, his employment history, the 3 families he's already helped out of their savings?" Ray's face was turning red. "You investigated your own brother-in-law?" "I investigated the man who was going through my bank statements without permission. The man who convinced my wife to sign papers she didn't understand. The man who turned my friends against me by offering them jobs and telling them I was unstable." "That's not," Mike started. "That's exactly what happened." I cut him off. "Ray, did you get that job he promised you?" Ray's silence was answer enough. "Mike, did your wife ever get that call from Nicole expressing concern about my mental state?" Mike nodded reluctantly. "Jim, did Darren happen to mention that he was looking into refinancing options for the whole neighborhood? That he could get everyone better rates?" Jim's eyes widened. "How did you—" "Because it's his pattern. He finds a family, gains their trust, gets access to their finances, and bleeds them dry, slowly, carefully, legally. By the time they figure out what happened, he's moved on to the next mark." I stood up and walked to the window. The only thing I couldn't figure out was how he planned to get access to our money. Then I realized he didn't need to steal it. He just needed Nicole to give it to him voluntarily. "That's insane," Ray said. "Nicole would never." "Nicole already has." I turned back to face them. "She's signed loan applications using our house as collateral. She's changed the beneficiaries on our life insurance policies. She's given him power of attorney over our savings account, all because she thought she was helping her struggling husband get better financial advice." The room was dead quiet. Finally, Mike spoke up. "If all this is true, why haven't you stopped her?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Who says I haven't?" That's when Nicole walked in with Darren. They'd been listening from the hallway. I'd counted on that too. "Pete, what are you doing?" Nicole demanded. "Having an honest conversation with my friends? Something I should have done weeks ago." Darren stepped forward, his face flushed. "You have no right to make accusations. I have every right to protect my family from a con artist." "Con artist?" Darren's voice went up an octave. "I've done nothing but try to help you people." "You people," I repeated. "There it is. The real Darren Price. Everybody. Not the helpful brother-in-law, not the financial advisor, not the family man. Just another hustler looking for an easy mark." "Pete, stop it!" Nicole was crying now. "Darren's been nothing but kind to us." "Darren's been nothing but smart," I corrected. "He found a family with money and a wife who felt underappreciated. He convinced her that her husband was holding her back, that she deserved better, that he could provide it. Classic manipulation." I walked over to my desk and pulled out another folder. Here's the loan application you signed last week, Nicole. The one that puts our house up as collateral for a business investment. Darren's business investment. Nicole's face went white. That was just paperwork. Darren said it was routine. Routine for him, maybe. He's done it 3 times before with 3 different families. The Hendersons in Toledo lost their house. The Martins in Columbus lost their retirement savings. The Washingtons in Cincinnati lost both. I handed the folder to Ray. It's all in there. Police reports, civil court filings, bankruptcy documents. Our boy Darren has been busy. Darren was backing toward the door. This is ridiculous. I don't have to listen to these paranoid fantasies. No, you don't, I agreed. But you might want to stick around for the best part. I walked to my desk one more time and pulled out a final folder. This one was thick. See, while you were busy convincing my wife to sign away our assets, I was busy protecting them. Every document you had her sign, I had voided within 24 hours. Every account you gained access to, I had frozen and transferred. Every loan application, every beneficiary change, every power of attorney form, worthless? Darren's face was now completely pale. That's impossible. I watched her sign. You watched her sign papers that had already been legally nullified by documents she signed the day before, documents she thought were insurance forms and tax papers. I turned to Nicole. Remember all those routine papers I had you sign? The ones I said were for our accountant? Those were the real documents, honey. The ones that protected us from exactly what Darren was planning. Nicole was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. You knew? I knew from day one. I just wanted to see how far you'd both go. The room erupted. Nicole was screaming, Darren was threatening lawsuits. My former friends were demanding explanations, but I wasn't done yet. Here's the really beautiful part, I said, raising my voice above the chaos. While Darren was so focused on stealing our money, he forgot about his own problems. See, when you apply for fraudulent loans using falsified information, which is what all those applications Nicole signed actually were, thanks to the false financial data I fed him, that's a federal crime. Darren stopped mid-threat. What? I made sure every piece of financial information you received was technically false. Our real account balances, our actual income, our true debt-to-income ratio, all different from what I told you. So when you use that information to prepare loan applications, you committed fraud. I pulled out my phone. I've got recordings of every conversation, copies of every document, and a very interested FBI agent who specializes in financial crimes. Darren lunged for me. He was fast, but I was ready. I sidestepped his charge and let him crash into my bookshelf. Books went flying and Darren went down hard. Pete! Nicole screamed. Self-defense, I said calmly. All captured on the security cameras I installed last month. Darren was getting to his feet, his expensive suit torn, his face bleeding from a cut on his forehead. You son of a witch. I'm the son of a witch who just saved his family from a con artist, I corrected. The question is, what happens now? What happened next was beautiful chaos. Darren tried to run, but Ray, God bless him, had apparently decided which side he was really on. He blocked the doorway while Mike called the police. Jim was helping Nicole to a chair while she hyperventilated into a paper bag. Let me go, Darren shouted. I haven't done anything wrong. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft, I counted off on my fingers. Plus whatever charges come from those other 3 families you scammed. Yeah, you're going to be busy for a while. The police arrived within 10 minutes. I handed over my evidence folders to Detective Sarah Martinez, a woman I'd met during a previous investigation involving stolen equipment at the plant. Mr. O'Malley, she said, flipping through the documents. This is quite a collection. 3 weeks of careful documentation, I replied. Everything's dated, witnessed, and backed up digitally. She looked at Darren, who was now sitting on my couch with his head in his hands. Mr. Price, I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning. This is insane, Darren muttered. I was trying to help them. Help yourself, Detective Martinez corrected. We've been tracking your activities across 3 counties, Mr. Price. Mr. O'Malley's evidence just filled in the missing pieces. That's when I realized the FBI agent I'd mentioned wasn't hypothetical. They'd been building a case against Darren for months. You were already investigating him? Nicole asked, her voice barely a whisper. Detective Martinez nodded. Financial Fraud Task Force, Mr. Price has been on our radar since the Henderson case in Toledo. We just needed someone to catch him in the act. And Pete did, Ray said. looking at me with something like admiration. Holy crap, Pete. You played him perfectly. Language, I said automatically, then grinned. But yeah, I did. As they led Darren away in handcuffs, he turned back to me. This isn't over. Yeah, it is, I replied. Enjoy federal prison. After the police left, my living room felt like a battlefield. Nicole was still crying. My friends were staring at me like I'd grown a second head, and I was standing in the middle of it all, feeling strangely empty. I can't believe you did this, Nicole said finally. Did what? Saved our family from a con artist? You manipulated me. You lied to me. You made me sign papers without telling me what they were. I protected you from signing papers that would have ruined us, I corrected. There's a difference. You didn't trust me. You didn't give me a reason to trust you. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Finally, Ray cleared his throat. Pete, I owe you an apology. No, you don't. You were looking out for what you thought was my best interest. Darren's just good at what he does. I should have known better. Should have trusted you. You should have talked to me instead of listening to gossip and job offers. Mike stepped forward. We all should have. I'm sorry, man. Jim nodded. Yeah, me too. That was some impressive detective work. It was some impressive manipulation, Nicole said bitterly. I turned to face my wife. Nicole, in the past 3 months, you've sided with a stranger over your husband, signed legal documents without reading them, shared our private financial information with someone you barely knew, and convinced our friends that I was mentally unstable. But I'm the manipulator? I was trying to help our family. You were trying to impress your new brother-in-law. There's a difference. Riley chose that moment to come home from her friend's house. She walked into our living room, took one look at the overturned bookshelf, her crying mother, and the group of uncomfortable men, and sighed. Let me guess. Darren? How did you? Nicole started. Mom, I'm 18, not 8. I could see what he was doing from day one. Riley dropped her purse on the coffee table. Dad, did you finally bust him? The FBI did. I just helped. Riley grinned. My grin, not Nicole's. Awesome. I never liked him anyway. Riley, Nicole protested. What? He was slimy, Mom. He looked at our house like he was pricing everything for a garage sale. Out of the mouths of babes. Ray, Mike, and Jim left shortly after, each of them shaking my hand and promising to buy me a beer, lots of beers, to make up for doubting me. I appreciated the gesture, but I knew it would take time to rebuild those friendships. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. Nicole went to her sister's house. Janet, it turned out, was just as shocked as everyone else to discover her new husband was a career criminal. Their marriage was over before it hit the 4-month mark. Riley and I ordered pizza and watched the news together. The story made the local stations, regional pharmaceutical executive arrested in multi-county fraud scheme. They used Darren's corporate headshot, the one where he looked successful and trustworthy. He really had everyone fooled, Riley said, stealing a piece of pepperoni off my slice. Not everyone. You saw through him. Yeah, but I'm naturally suspicious of people who compliment Mom's cooking. Nobody's that good a liar. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media interviews, and awkward conversations with neighbors who'd heard Nicole's version of events and believed I was the problem. The truth has a way of spreading, though, and eventually, the whole story came out. Darren was charged with 15 counts of fraud across 4 states. The prosecution offered him a plea deal, 7 years in federal prison in exchange for cooperating with their investigation and helping recover money for his victims. He took it. Nicole filed for divorce. I didn't contest it. After everything that had happened, we both knew the marriage was over. She got half the assets, I got full custody of Riley, and we agreed to be civil for our daughter's sake. The house felt different without Nicole's constant criticism and Darren's looming presence. Quieter, but also more peaceful. Riley and I developed a routine. I'd cook breakfast, she'd handle dinner, and we'd trade off on dishes and laundry. You know what's funny? She said one evening as we cleaned up after a particularly successful attempt at homemade tacos. What's that? Mom always said you weren't ambitious enough, that you didn't think big enough, but you just took down a guy with an MBA and a 6-figure salary using nothing but patience and a high school education. Community college, I corrected. 2 years, business administration. Even better. You outsmarted a smart guy by being smarter. 3 months after Darren's arrest, I got a call from Detective Martinez. 3 more families had come forward with similar stories about Darren's financial advice. The FBI estimated he'd stolen over $2 million across a decade of cons. Your evidence was crucial in building the case, she told me. Without your documentation, we might never have been able to prove the pattern. Happy to help. There's something else. The victims' families want to thank you. You're the first person who managed to stop him before he could finish the con. I had advantages they didn't. I knew something was wrong from the beginning. No, Mr. O'Malley. You had something they didn't. You trusted your instincts instead of your ego. That night, I sat in my backyard with a beer, thinking about everything that had happened. A year ago, I'd been a married maintenance supervisor with a stable life and a comfortable routine. Now I was a divorced single father who'd helped bring down a career criminal. Funny how life works out. Riley joined me on the deck, carrying her own soda. Any regrets? She asked. About what? Any of it. The investigation, the divorce, Darren, the whole mess. I thought about it seriously. I regret that your mother got hurt. I regret that our marriage ended. I regret that you had to see your parents' relationship fall apart. But I don't regret protecting our family. I don't regret stopping a criminal. And I don't regret finding out who my real friends are. Good answer. Riley clinked her soda can against my beer bottle. So what's next? College for you, work for me, maybe some dating when I'm ready? Dating? Riley made a face. Gross, Dad. I'm 42, not dead. Still gross. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Cleveland. Somewhere across town, Nicole was starting a new life. Somewhere in federal prison, Darren was learning that con artists don't do well behind bars. And somewhere in the distance, Ray, Mike, and Jim were probably having beers and talking about their friend Pete, who turned out to be a lot smarter than any of them had realized. I thought about the last 18 months. The betrayal, the investigation, the confrontation, the aftermath. It had been the most difficult period of my life, but also the most clarifying. I'd learned who I could trust, what I was capable of, and what really mattered. Dad, Riley said. Yeah? I'm proud of you. Thanks, kiddo. I'm proud of you too. For what? I didn't do anything. You saw through Darren when the adults couldn't. You supported me when everyone else thought I was crazy, and you're handling this whole situation with more maturity than most grown-ups would. I learned from the best. As the stars came out over Cleveland, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's being right. And sometimes the best victory isn't winning. It's surviving with your integrity intact. Darren Price thought he could manipulate a blue-collar family because he assumed we were too simple to see through his sophisticated con. He was wrong, dead wrong. And that mistake cost him everything.